Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2024 U.S. Open Initial Research Show. I hope you had a fantastic Memorial Tournament. You had Scotty Scheffler in your outrights and used plenty of Scheffler and Morikawa and Seabass, Matt Fitzpatrick, who had a great Sunday, and you avoided the Adam Shanks, Shane Lowry's, and all of that in the slate this past week. So make sure to let me know in chat or in the comments how your Memorial was. Mine was very, very poor with the exception of one lineup. I did top 50 a 3 max entry tournament over on DraftKings that salvaged my week. It still didn't bring me to break even, as every other lineup was very, very poor. Way too much Patrick Cantlay, who missed the cut. Adam Schenk, who did not play well. But I did happen to have a top 50 lineup that salvaged most of my week. So it was okay, but we're going to definitely try and get on the right foot to start our week for the United States Open. And we go from one course architect and honestly one of the best players in the game, from Jack Nicklaus, to another premium design of a integral part or integral person in terms of golf architecture. We are at a Don Ross design. We'll get into that momentarily when we get into the tournament fact sheet. So looking forward to a very fun week, the United States Open. Let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best golf analytics tool out there for your money. It's going to make you a much smarter golf gambler and a much better golf DFS player. Look, if you are a member at Fantasy National, you're not going to have to listen to a moron like me. You're going to have the power at your fingertips to play the Scotty Schefflers, the Colin Morikawas, the Christian Bezuidenhout's, and everyone else who is a solid play week in and week out on the PGA Tour. So go subscribe to Fantasy National. You will not regret it. In the description to the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where every week I post research around the previous winners of that week's tournament. Of course, this week being the United States Open. So I'll have some research out tomorrow around the past United States Open champions, their form coming in, some interesting patterns that they share year over year, and the players I find in the field for this week's United States Open, and those who match that winning pattern. So if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, then give me a follow over at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and my top player usage. You would have seen all of the Sung J M that I played, which was a fairly solid play. You would have seen all the Patrick Cantlay that I had, which was not a very good play. You'd have seen the Denny McCarthy outright and all of the Seabass in my DFS lineups. So if you want to see those pieces of information every week, that is the betting card and my top player usage, give me a follow over at X. And then lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle is in the description. He writes a very good article called The Fringe. It's a great way to start your week of preparation, and he continues to update you with his own version of recent form and course history throughout the week. And if you are a subscriber to his article, which is free to do, you're going to be able to join us in his Substack chat every Wednesday night, as he is gracious enough to host me over there, and we continue the DFS talk about game theory, our favorite areas of the price board, chalk that we don't mind eating, and some fades that we're scared to do, but we're doing it. So you definitely don't want to miss out on that. It's a great discussion every week, and the only way you're going to be able to join us is if you're subscribed to his article. It is free to do, by the way, to subscribe. So go show him some support. Follow him over on social media as well. Lastly, we are live. Chat is open. Again, I want to hear from you all. In addition to how your Memorial Tournament was, how were your lineups? Did you have the Scotty Scheffler outright, or maybe you had some Seabass top 5 or some top 10s or whatnot? So let me know how that went. And then moving forward, what do you know of Pinehurst number 2? Do you think Scotty Scheffler is the clear runaway favorite? Who is your choice to win if it's not Scotty Scheffler? Would love to hear from the community in that regard. So let's do our initial research for the 2024 United States Open. And we start, as we always do, to begin the week over at the GCSAA tournament fact sheet. Now, I mentioned that we are at a signature course, if you will, for one of the game's best or greatest golf architects. Of course, last week we were at Jack's place. Jack has his hands on several courses that are on the PGA Tour. And then, obviously Pete Dye with TPC Sawgrass and several other notable courses, Harbor Town and whatnot. Pinehurst number 2 is considered widely to be Don Ross's greatest design. He is also known to have his hands on a few courses on the PGA Tour regularly, such as Sedgefield, the host of the Wyndham Championship. Is the one that's coming to me immediately. But he has his hands on a few courses on the PGA Tour, and as I mentioned, this is probably his shining jewel. Pinehurst number 2 in Pinehurst, North Carolina. It goes as a Don Ross design. It has been restored and renovated as recently as 2011 by Bill Corr and Ben Crenshaw, trying to restore it to Don Ross's original design and whatnot. Pinehurst number 2 is an extremely long par 70, measuring over 7,500 yards as a par 70. I mean, just a behemoth of a course in terms of length. This is the longest course by par, not by raw yardage, but by par, that the players will see this season on the PGA Tour. Some other notable aspects of Pinehurst number 2. The greens are 6,500 square feet, so slightly larger than the average green on the PGA Tour, but they will not play that large at all. They are going to essentially cut in half in terms of the playable size of these greens. We saw that quite a bit with the Memorial, how the greens got really firm with all of the undulation and speed in those greens. They played much smaller. It's going to be very similar here at Pinehurst. All of these greens are Don Ross classical designs, if you will, in like dome shaped or turtle backed, if you will. So kind of pushed up on all sides. So steep runoffs, undulation, tiering on a few of the greens, so that you will not play to 6,500 square feet. They're going to play much smaller than that. Another interesting aspect of Pinehurst number 2 is that there's really no rough. You see 40 native sandscapes. Really, this is a lot like Vedanta in that regard, that the fairways essentially just run into these bunkers and native areas. These fairways are quite wide, 35 to 45 yards in the landing zones. So quite forgiving in that regard. But there's no rough per se, just fairway straight to bunkers, straight to native area. And these native areas are extremely difficult to play out of. So there is quite a bit of premium on finding the fairway. 117 bunkers in and on Pinehurst number 2. Only one hole with water in play, and I'm going to tell you right now, for the professionals, it does not come into play. So really, there is no water that comes into play on the course. So that's why the extreme number of bunkers to combined with the native areas is really the defense of the course, along with just being a Don Ross difficult green design. The greens were changed before the 2014 U.S. Open. The 2014 U.S. Open was played at Pinehurst. We'll take a casual look at that leaderboard and such throughout the week. Martin Keimer was your 2014 U.S. Open winner, running away from the field, winning by 8 shots. So we'll take a casual look, but I don't want to go too heavy into that since that is such a long time ago, especially for golf standards, and players have come and gone and whatnot. But in 2014, or right before 2014, they did change the greens from bent to Bermuda, and that has stayed consistent from 2014 to 2024. So we are on Bermuda greens, specifically Champion Ultra Dwarf Bermuda greens. The fairways are Bermuda as well. Whatever little rough is native area with wiregrass. And again, that wiregrass is very unpredictable, very difficult to play out of. So there is quite a premium on making sure you're in the fairway. Let's see. Some course notes here. Mark the first U.S. Open played on specifically Champion Ultra Dwarf Bermuda. You see Pinehurst switch from bent. Excuse me. I thought they were on Bermuda for the 2014 U.S. Open. It says that they switched from bent to Bermuda right after 2014. So my apologies. I was incorrect with that. But there's a look at Pinehurst, number 2, in terms of a GCSAA tournament fact sheet. Again, the longest course by par. Again, this is the raw yardage. Torrey Pines always going to be the longest. Corrales is very long, but these are par 72s. Valhalla was a par 71, maybe 72. Kapalua is a 73 par, 72 par. So as a par 70, this is the longest course by par that the players will see this season. The greens are large by PGA Tour standards, but they will not play that way, having the classic Don Ross design of being pushed up, if you will, on all sides. There was a quote from somebody in years past that said your shots into greens at Pinehurst number 2 are trying to land on a VW Beetle. That's a pretty vivid image, if you will, trying to land on these humpbacked greens, if you will. And of course, this is Don Ross's shining jewel, so we will definitely take a look at some Don Ross Architect filters in Fantasy National. All right, with that, let's go ahead and jump to Fantasy National and take a quick look at the players in the field this week for the U.S. Open. I do know that Bobby Mack has not been loaded in to Fantasy National. He is obviously qualified thanks to his win at the RBC Canadian. So just be aware of that he is not listed here. But of the players in the field for the United States Open, in the past 24 rounds, so long as it's been in 2024 calendar year, our top performers have been Scotty Scheffler, Xander, Rory, Hideki, Colin Morikawa, Ludwig Aubert, Alex Noren, Billy Horschel, Bryson, and Tommy Fleetwood. It's interesting to see the one live player being Bryson, of course, his runner-up at the PGA Championship. He played very well at the Masters, kind of lost some ground on the weekend, but still was pretty darn solid. So there's your top 10 in terms of total performance in the immediacy in the last 24 rounds. One thing that we know for certain, this is a U.S. Open. U.S. Opens are always notoriously difficult. You can see LACC last year, Wyndham Clark, the Country Club when Matt Fitzpatrick won. I mean, very rarely. I mean, you might get an average round every once in a while, but it's mostly difficult, and that's the way the USGA wants it. So in rounds that are difficult to par, the last 2 years, your top performers have been Scotty, Rory, Wyndham Clark, Xander, Tommy Fleetwood, Victor Hovland, Patrick Cantlay, Tyrrell Hatton, Cam Smith, and Russell Henley. All right. Before we go into a lot of a little bit more detailed data, I still don't think there's going to be much to gain from this. Again, this is just from 2024, but we can take a casual look. I've also got the Pro Visualizer hole yardages and estimated proximities. I said Pro Visualizer. This is from the U.S. Open website. I figured that was going to be much more accurate, or an accurate display of the scorecard, proximities, and whatnot. So let's go ahead and run through this here fairly quickly, and then we'll take a quick gander at perhaps some specific holes in Fantasy National. But our par 70 here at Pinehurst is a typical par 70 in the sense that we have 4 par 3s and 2 par 5s. So the par 3s, we have 2, what I'd say, medium length, all of them measuring over 180 yards. So 2 from 175 to 200. We have a fairly long par 3 and 1 extremely long par 3. Our par 4s, we have a very good mix of par 4s here at Pinehurst. We don't have any drivable par 4s, but we do have 3 short par 4s. 3 measuring from 350 to 400. We have 2 from 400 to 450. 4 from 450 to 500. And 3 500 plus par 4s. That is where the majority of the length comes at Pinehurst, are these very long, very difficult par 4s. And then our par 5s, if I swivel out of the way, we have 2 par 5s, 1 on each side of 600, 1 under 600, and 1 over 600 yards in length. And then if we take a quick look at the estimated proximity, you see the just sheer volume of estimated approach shots coming from 200 plus. Of course, both par 5s fall into here. I would imagine, especially the shorter par 5, which I believe is on the front 9, I believe most players will attack that green in 2. Now, the par 5 that's over 600 yards might end up being more of a traditional 3-shot hole, but I think the longer hitters will still definitely go for it in 2. We do have a couple of very, very short estimated proximities. Again, we saw that we had 3 par 4s measuring from 350 to 400. One of those is a true forced layup with just an iron, and then leaving themselves with a little bit of a longer approach shot. 2 very, very short approach shots on those other 2 short par 4s. But again, the majority of our approach shots, I would imagine, are going to be 175 plus, just due to the length of a lot of the holes, especially the par 4s. Here at Pinehurst, and again, every single par 3 measures over 180. So there's a quick look at the estimated proximity and the hole composition charts from the U.S. Open website. I will bring us back to Fantasy National, bring up the scorecard and graphical view again. I'm not going to want to go into this too heavily, since this was 10 years ago. Although the course, I don't think, has changed all that much. So this actually might be somewhat useful in 2014. The most difficult hole was the par 3 6th. You see it played well over a third of a shot over par. I mean, just a brutally difficult hole. And there were only 2 holes that played under par. The par 5 5th played to 2/10ths of a shot under par, and surprisingly, it wasn't the other par 5. You see, the other par 5 played to par, even par. The other hole that played under par was the short par 4 3rd, played to 0.08 of a shot under par, and that is it. Only 2 holes played under par during 2014, and I mean several holes were extremely difficult more than a third of a shot over par, a third of a shot over par, a third of a shot over par, third of a shot over par. I mean, just horrendously difficult. Quarter of a shot over par, 14 hundredths, quarter of a shot, 2/10. Very, very, very difficult test of golf. Whoops, I meant to bring that up in a new tab. So we go to 2014 just to take, again, just a casual look. Martin Kaymer ran away from the field that week, shooting -9. The next closest competitor was -1. Just horrendously difficult. The cut line that year was +6. Just extremely difficult. Extremely, extremely difficult. Martin Kaymer was just, gosh dang it, completely on top of his game when he won in 2014. So I'll keep that up off to the side. We'll run through some of this very quickly. Of course, with this being the U.S. Open, the USGA stats are proprietary, so we do not have a lot, particularly strokes gained. We see that for our top 10s, they took advantage of the par 5s when they could. There's only 2 of them, but they took advantage of the par 5s when they could. Much the same for the top 5s. And then Martin Kaymer played the par 4s pretty well, which is what I would expect to be pretty important considering this is a par 70, so we have 12 par 4s. We'll take a casual look again at the whole composition. Now, here in Fantasy National, it has 3 par 3s measuring over 200, which is a slight variation. We had 2 in this bucket, 1 in 200 to 225, and then 1 225 plus per the U.S. Open website. So a little bit slight discrepancy there. You see, again, 5 par 3s measuring 450 to 500 yards, 3 above 500 yards, just very, very long. And then your mix of shorter par 4s. Scoring distribution, so many bogeys, so many doubles, very few birdies. Traditionally, like you would at a U.S. Open or at the Memorial, pars are generally really good scorers around this place. You see the cut line +6. Accuracy was much higher. Again, players know the emphasis of being in the fairways with this being a U.S. Open, and these fairways are naturally a little bit more forgiving, 35 to 45 yards. But you see the greens, just horrendously difficult. Scrambling was extremely difficult if you didn't hit the green in regulation. And you see all the 3 putts per round. Just, I mean, this is a U.S. Open. It's going to be lightning fast. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be very, very, very difficult. Okay, so with that, yes, while we don't have some of the shot types, we definitely can gain some inferences here. So when rounds are difficult relative to par, the last 2 years, our top off-the-tee players have been Scotty, Rory, Patrick Cantlay, Victor Hovland, Siwoo Kim, Will Zalatoris, Sung Jae, Bryson, Jordan Spieth, and Tyrrell Hatton. Only because I have the difficult relative to par filter selected, I'm going to skip approach for a moment and go to around the green. One of the things that I really want to emphasize this week is that we're going to be looking at around the green in every which way except for long rough, because there is no rough really around Pinehurst. This is all closely mown area or sand and waste areas. So there's no rough. So we're going to be looking at around the green when it's difficult. Around the green, like sand saves probably anytime we're looking at around the green. So your top around the green performers when rounds are difficult relative to par: Scotty, Tommy, Hideki, Stefan Jaeger, Brendan Todd, Rory, Jason Day, Brooks Koepka, Alex Noren, and Matt Fitzpatrick. Let's move to approach. All right, last 24 rounds. Let's bring this into the 2024 season. 3 months. I just want immediacy. Our top approach players in the past 3 months or 24 rounds, whichever it comes first. Scotty, Corey Connors, Rory, Akshay Bhatia, Siwoo Kim, Xander, Aaron Rai, JT, Russell Henley, Hideki, and Seamus Power. Now, do realize that the Memorial is not in since it finished, maybe an hour and a half ago or so. So it will be in here tomorrow night for our Data Dive show. But it's not in there now, so this might change slightly. Scotty's still going to be number one. It's Scotty. Siwoo might rise a little bit. Xander will probably rise a little bit. But there's a look at your top approach players. And then let's take a look at some Lightning. Actually, you know what? Let's go check the historic conditions. So we've got Lightning bent last year. Lightning bent at winged foot. My guess is that they will be Lightning, but we don't have the speeds at a lot of the former U.S. Opens. Because of that, we know we're on Bermuda, so we'll check Bermuda. My guess is they will be Lightning, but I cannot confirm that. And we did not get a stimp meter reading on the GCSA tournament fact sheet. So this is a very conservative approach to putting, but I can't confirm that it'll be Lightning. I'm pretty sure can't confirm it. So on Fast and Lightning Bermuda greens in the past 2 years, our top putters have been Wyndham Clark, Chesson Hadley, Sahith Theegala, Russell Henley, Alex Noren, Matt Fitzpatrick, Seabez, Brendan Todd, Taylor Moore, and Thomas Dietrich. If we want to look at just Lightning, going to try to take a quick snapshot of those 10 names. If we look at just Lightning, not nearly the sample size as you can see here. 24 rounds is maximum set, and I'm allowing up to 36. Top Lightning Lightning Bermuda putters. Lightning only. Xander, Matt Fitzpatrick, Sam Burns, Thomas Dietrich, Brian Harmon, Minwoo Lee, Seabez, Sahith Theegala, Tommy Fleetwood, Terrell Hatton. So it changes quite a bit. Seabez is still up there. I believe Fitzpatrick was up there in the top 10 for Fast and Lightning. But we got some new names here. Tommy, Sahith, Minwoo Lee really rises on Lightning Bermuda greens. Looks like it's from this year's Players. Really, the Players was Lightning Speed greens. There you go. Yeah. Alrighty. Interesting. The Arnold Palmer, which are always Lightning. You had one good round and one really bad round. So, okay. Interesting to note that. Harmon, of course, you would expect Sam Burns, Bermuda Billy. He was actually not very good at the Players, but typically you can see all the success that he has, especially on Lightning Bermuda. Tour Championship Players, the Sanderson Farms. He's generally pretty solid there. So, yep. And because I'm on putting, and because there is no rough, this is all closely mown area, I have a lot of feeling, or I have a pretty strong inclination that players are going to be putting when they are off the green quite a bit more than what they're used to. So let's take a look at a couple of different things here as well. We're still going to look at Bermuda, but we're gonna go with Fast and Lightning. Let's look at 3-putt avoidance, especially because at least in 2014, 3 putts per round were, you almost had 1 3-putt round per player. I mean, just a lot A lot of 3-putts. Your top 3-putt avoiders on lightning or fast and lightning Bermuda greens: Chesson Hadley, Wyndham Clark, Harry Higgs, Seabez, Eric Cole, Nico Echeverria, Thomas Dietrich, Sahith Theegala, Jordan Spieth, and Max Homa. So Harry Higgs, having qualified through U.S. Open qualifying. Seabez, Eric Cole, Wyndham Clark was up there in terms of total putting, as you can see. Fast and lightning. So look at that. It's quite interesting. Most of these guys are pretty darn good in terms of strokes gained putting anyway. The one exception here is Harry Higgs. He's 122nd, at least in in this field, in terms of strokes gained putting on fast and lightning Bermuda greens. But he's the second rated, or tied for second rated, 3-putt avoider on fast and lightning Bermuda greens. Something else that I want to take a look at, again, because of the amount of 3-putts, that the inclination, the strong feeling I have that these players are going to be putting from off the green. Let's take a look at putting from 25 plus, distance putting, lag putting. Your top performers on distance putting on fast and lightning Bermuda greens: Xander, Eric Van Rooyen, Tyrrell Hatton, Russell Henley, Webb Simpson, Mac Meisner. Only 5 rounds, so be a little cautious with that. Very small sample size there. Tom Hoge, Tom Kim, Ludwig Aubert, and Sahith Theegala. Quite interesting. Again, most of these guys, good putters, good to great. The exceptions being EVR. He's great at lag putting, but not much of anything else. And Tom Kim is horrendous on fast and lightning Bermuda greens, but is good at distance putting. The only other thing we can probably take a look at in terms of overview tonight, I mean, we could take a look at a few things, but I don't want to go too much into it. I want to save a lot of that for the data dive tomorrow. So let's bring this in to the last 24 rounds, last 3 months. Let's take a look at. We'll take a look at par fives. I mean, you gotta do pretty well on these par fives. We saw how important it was for Martin Keimer and the rest of the top 10s. So your top par 5 performers the last 24 rounds: Scotty, Xander, Billy Horschel, Patrick Cantlay, Mac Hughes, Ben On, Rory, Thomas Dietrich, Justin Thomas, Ludwig Aubert, Akshay Bhatia. All right, and like I said, I'll be going into quite a bit more extensive detail tomorrow in the Data Dive show. But let's take a look at the tournament history, strokes gained total tab. Normally, this would be for the course. This is the U.S. Open. Venues change every year. So this is your top performers in the past 5 U.S. Opens. Rory is your top strokes gained total player the last 5 U.S. Opens. Nothing outside of a top 10, including runner-up last year. Our defending champion is Wyndham Clark. Quite interesting to see. He missed the cut his first 2 tries at the U.S. Open and then wins. John Rahm, of course, winner at Torrey Pines. 3rd, another top 10. He's played very well. Xander's just very consistent. Scotty Scheffler, 2 top 5s, another top 10. He did miss the cut in 2019. Hideki, always solid. DJ has definitely been a prime performer in U.S. Opens. Morikawa, pretty good. Bryson's been pretty good, winning in 2021. Where was this one? That's John Rahm's, of course. So where was this one? I should know this. Winged Foot. Okay. So winning at Winged Foot. Matt Fitzpatrick at the Country Club in Brookline, Mass. Cantlay's been fairly solid. Brooks has been much more in the PGA Championship, not the U.S. Open. Granted, he still has a U.S. Open title. Woodland, his win at Pebble Beach. Harris English has been good. Will Zalatoris, T6 and a T2 and a missed cut. Victor Hovland's been good whenever he's generally played. He had to withdraw at Torrey. Missed the cut at Brookline, Mass. So there's a look at some of the players who have traditionally performed the best at U.S. Opens. Players who have not. Victor Paris, 0 for 4 at U.S. Opens. Phil Mickelson, of course, getting up there in age, but again, kind of like Brooks, he's performed better at PGA Championships than the U.S. Opens. Ryan Fox, 1 for 4. He's played in a lot of them, but he's just not done well. I've talked about it all year this year, and he's proven me wrong so far, but Max Homa, he has generally not played well before this year in major championships. You see a lot of people liked his chances at LA Country Club last year. He missed the cut. Nothing better than a T47 at a U.S. Open. JT Poston, generally U.S. Opens don't set up well for him because they're long and difficult. He generally plays better when it's short and easy. Cameron Young has not been too successful at U.S. Opens. Kirk Itayama, 0 for 3. Siwoo's 2 for 5, but pretty lackluster in terms of finishes. So there's a look at the players who have not played well in U.S. Opens. Okay. With that, I think that's a good segue. We're going to move to Microsoft Excel and go to the early look file to round out the show this evening. This is performance all the way back to 2012 at U.S. Opens. You see Xander has played in 7 of them since 2012. He's averaged a 7th place finish. He's just been solid all the way around. Do note that we don't have the strokes gained data for a lot of these. For example, we didn't get the strokes gained data for 2022 at the Country Club for whatever reason. And then everything before Shinnecock we didn't have. So really the strokes gained portion is only from LACC, Torrey, Wingfoot, and Pebble. It's only 4 years. So a little bit smaller of a sample size, but everything else we have all the way back to 2012. I'm just showing you all for transparency. But Xander has played very, very well. Tom Kim's been pretty darn good. 2 for 2. Even though he's not a good putter on Bermuda, it's quite interesting. He's actually been pretty darn good on or at the U.S. Open. Let's bring this back up. We'll change the page view again just very quickly. He's only played 2 times. Yeah, 18.43, 8th and a 23rd. So, yeah, right there. Right under Victor. And above Wyndham Clark in terms of strokes gained total. So quite interesting. Quite interesting in that regard. Sorry, I was a little shocked to see that, but it is what it is. Minwoo Lee, much the same. Morikawa's been good. Brooks, of course. DJ, of course. Hideki, 10 for 11. Not necessarily putting the best, but you don't expect that from Hideki. He's just ball striking it well. Cantley, 7 for 7. Actually surprising to see that he has lost strokes on approach in his on average at U.S. Opens. It's been his short game that has saved him. Scheffler, of course, only 4 for 6. But, I mean, look at the tear he is on right now. Fitzpatrick's been really good at them. Of course, his win at the Country Club. So if let's remove, gosh dang it, I didn't want to sort, I want to filter. Let's sort out. And let's make sure. Well, no, because we probably want to look at Tom Kim and Minwoo Lee as well. So let's remove all the players that have only played one U.S. Open. You've had to have played at least 2 U.S. Opens. Let's see if we can figure out some generalities here on the players that have performed well. A couple players negative in terms of off the tee, but only slightly. Fitzpatrick and Tom Kim. That's not his game anyway. Tom Kim's much more in the irons, and you see that there. Only one player negative in terms of irons or approaches who have averaged a top 40. Okay. This is a 1.5. This is a 0.9. Look at it around the green. Look at that. Not a single player negative. Now, you don't have the high raw numbers, the 3.8s, the 3.1s, but you've got nobody, and I mean nobody, negative in terms of around the green who has performed well year over year at the U.S. Open. Again, this is only a 0.9, so it matches the off the tee, but man, that's striking to see. So we need to factor in quite a bit of around the green, it seems like. Putting, kind of hit and miss. It's still a 0.8, but some players have been very good. Some players are lackluster. Moving into distance, I'm surprised that distance isn't a huge factor. You do have a few players with some good numbers here. Of course, DJ, Minwoo Lee really moves it. Rahm and Rory, of course. But, Colin Morikawa, not long by any means. Tom Kim, not long by any means. Fitzpatrick's actually worked on gaining distance, but he is still negative in terms of driving distance. So, I don't know. Might be a little bit here, but it's not as stark of a correlation as I thought it would be. As you would expect, it's good drives and greens. You got to hit the fairways. More so, you just got to hit these greens. They're not easy to do. So another situation like last week in the Memorial, we're probably just going to look at some greens gained when it's difficult. That's what the U.S. Open is. Look at all this just solid green correlation here with greens gained and top performance. Moving into scoring, as you would probably expect, more so in the bogey avoidance, just because pars are good scores at a U.S. Open. This is a 2.7. This is a 2.1. It's what I would have expected. I mean, you got a couple of pretty high numbers here, 4.9, 4.7. Only one 4.7, and then it drops quickly into the 3s and then the 2s for the birdies gained. So, despite the fact that I've been focused on birdies or better gained or in the past month or so with my research that I'm doing on DraftKings scoring, this is probably one week where I will put the majority of the emphasis in bogey avoidance. I still think birdies gained is going to have a small sliver in my mixed condition model, but more so like 5% and 10 to 15%. At least early on in the week, I can always adjust. Moving into the par 3s, 4s, and 5s. Like, par 3s are going to be something. Not a single player negative in them. You've got a 1.2, but look at all this par 4. Oh, gosh. Look at all that par 4 green. This is a 5. 5.0. Just massive. Gonna have to play these par 4s. You have to play par 4s very, very well. And then the par 5s is a 1.1. What was the par 3s again? 1.2. So about even. So a lot in the par 4s. Which you would expect. Especially this week because it's par 70. And then if we look at procs, quite a bit in the 175 to 200. Total procs seems like it could be a thing, maybe. But we'll go into that tomorrow in the Day to Dive show. We'll go into all of that tomorrow. So that's what I have for you all in terms of an early look file. Apologies for in the middle of the show getting the scratch in the throat. So hopefully that wasn't too annoying for you all. But I want to thank you all for tuning in, watching, listening, supporting the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. I always appreciate it. Love what I do, taking a look at in-depth sports statistics, giving you a statistician and data analyst view of what he sees, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. Was fairly successful at the PGA, fairly successful at the RBC Canadian, not so much at the Charles Schwab, and not so much last week. So if we're going to follow the pattern, this would be a good week. So we're going to try to get on the right foot this week for the third major of the year, the United States Open at Pinehurst number 2. Thanks again for all the support, for all the wagers you made this past week at the Memorial, for all the DFS contests you played this past week at the Memorial. And until I see you tomorrow night for the Data Dive show, may all your bets be profitable.